James was a freshman at university. He started living in a new city, in a new dormitory. The student dormitory was a converted old mansion. It housed hundreds of students, but at night the corridors would fall silent. One night, while James was sitting alone in his room, he heard a strange rustling. He turned his eyes around the room, but couldn't see anything. He felt the door to his room open slightly, but there was no one there. This bothered him, but he explained it to himself first. Maybe a wind had blown or the neighbor had gone to the toilet. However, strange events increased in the following days. Some students claimed he was lost. Some also said they heard strange noises at night. James thought these strange events were just legends, until he saw a strange shadow appear in his room. One night, while he was reading a book in his room, he looked out his window. He saw a dark figure walking, but this figure had no face. In panic, he locked his room door and hid in his bed. He couldn't sleep that night. He was filled with terrible thoughts. The next day, he told his friends about the incident. They said they had similar experiences. Now they knew something was wrong in this dormitory. However, they did not know what it was or how to stop it. One night, they gathered their courage and decided to go down to the basement of the dormitory. While doing an old research, they learned that there was a secret passage in this part of the country. As they made their way through the dark and deserted corridors, they began to hear strange sounds. The sound of heavy breathing felt like it was coming from the walls. They finally found the secret passage. A mysterious and frightening world opened up for them. The passage opened into a deep well. As James and his friends stared into the dark depths, they noticed a shadow approaching them. This time, a faceless man appeared in the shadow. They retreated in fear, but could not escape through the gate. Slowly, the faceless man approached them. At that moment, a scream was heard and James woke up and sat in his room. He looked around, sweating and shaking, but he was alone in his room. That night, the boundaries between reality and dreams blurred. But James had a feeling that what happened in that mysterious dormitory was not just a dream. James still couldn't shake the effect of that terrible dream. His heart was beating fast and he didn't feel safe even though he was in his room. However, he was wondering how much his dream had to do with reality. Maybe there was a secret hidden in the country's past. The next day, he went to the school library. While going through old newspaper archives, he discovered that the dormitory was built on the site of an old mansion, and that a mysterious family that once lived on these lands tragically died there. It was written that during the First World War, the family's sons did not return and the family's children disappeared at home before their eyes. As his research deepened, he came across many legends that the ghosts of the land's former inhabitants still haunt the mansion. Some claimed that the family's vengeful ghosts haunted the residents of the dormitory. James began to think that these stories were not just legends. Maybe he thought that the mysterious passage of the dormitory opened to the world of these ghosts. He got together with his friends and decided to investigate the past and dark corridors of the country. When night fell, they gathered their courage and went down to the basement again. When they found the passage, while looking into the deep well, they heard a voice rising from the passage. "Who woke me up?" It was a voice shouting. James and his friends were frozen. This voice rising from the bottom of the well was the voice of the faceless man. Perhaps these faceless ghosts had triggered a curse that had been dormant for years. Suddenly, the walls of the room began to shake. The anger of the ghosts spread everywhere. James and his friends were trapped in the dark corridor where the passage was blocked. However, there was a silver lining. James walked towards the well and called out to the faceless man, "I can tell you who I am. I'm James. I'm just looking for the truth. I want to know your story and your family's story." The voice paused for a moment. Then he took a deep breath and turned to James. "Your wisdom and curiosity should shed light on the roads paved with gold. If you are looking for the truth, be ready to face the truth." At that moment, the well suddenly turned dark, and James and his friends lost consciousness for a moment. When they opened their eyes, they were in the garden of the dormitory and there was no well. Silence reigned around. Instead of waking up the ghosts of the land, they put them at peace. James and his friends realized that pursuing the truth was sometimes scary, But for them, facing the unknown was what was truly scary.
Eva was full of excitement and anxiety when she started university. She was looking forward to meeting new people and living an independent life. However, when she got to college, she realized that the sorority wasn't as cheerful as it seemed. Although the outside of the building looked attractive, the inside was old and neglected. The first night, while sitting alone in his room, he started hearing strange noises. The knocks coming from the walls and the whispers echoing from the corridors were hurting his ears. Other girls said they heard the same thing, but staff claimed it was just normal noises from the old building. One night, while Eva was alone in her room, she noticed a figure reflected in the mirror next to her bed. Suddenly, the room was filled with icy cold, and he felt a strange smell in the air. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a dark figure, but when he approached, the figure had disappeared. Eva, who had moments of fear, felt as if this incident was not the only one in her room. Other girls began to have similar experiences. Some claimed to be watched by a dark presence at night, while others said a ghostly girl wandered through their rooms. Eva decided to investigate the events. When she dug through old archives, she discovered that there was a tragedy in the sorority's past. Years ago, the dormitory building was completely destroyed in a fire and several female students lost their lives. However, according to those who survived the fire, there was another female student who they thought had survived the fire. Her body was never found, and she had been considered missing ever since. Eva began to think that the ghost of this missing schoolgirl was haunting the dormitory. Perhaps this girl still considered the dormitory building her home and was trying to send messages to the survivors. One night, while Eva was alone in her room, she decided to summon the ghost of the missing girl. He decided to try an ancient ritual and lit a candle and left the room in darkness. She closed her eyes and waited silently. Suddenly, the room was filled with icy cold, and Eva felt a presence around her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a ghost appearing before her with a pale face. The ghost sadly reached out to him and said quietly, "You found me." Eva's heart was pounding, but she was not afraid. Instead, the ghost looked into the girl's eyes and tried to give her some sort of peace. Finally, he felt like the ghost girl had surrendered her soul in peace. The next day, silence reigned in the dormitory building. Other girls said they no longer heard strange noises and were free from the shadow of dark beings. Eva smiled with peace of mind at finding peace for the lost girl's soul. The girls' dormitory was no longer a part of a scary story, but a peaceful place. However, this illusion that everything was back to normal was short-lived for Eva. One night, sitting alone in her room, she felt that icy cold once again. A darkness spread throughout the room, and Eva felt a presence around her. Suddenly, the pale ghost girl appeared in the corner of the room and silently approached Eva. This time, there was an expression on his face, a mixture of ambition and anger. The fear inside Eva grew, for this was not the peaceful soul of the ghost, but a vengeance filled with death. He felt the ghost girl's hand begin to squeeze Eva's neck. She began to feel helplessly breathless and struggled weakly in the darkness that swirled around her. As he struggled with the anger of the vengeful ghost, only one thought crossed his mind. He had to be saved. With a last effort, he rolled towards the door of the room and managed to open it. When he came out into the corridor, he started running, out of breath. Without looking back, every step was filled with fear and despair. Eventually, he bumped into another student in the hallway and tried to express himself to her. "The ghost attacked me," she whispered in a trembling voice with sweat on her face and panic. The other student took Eva to her room and tried to help her. When they reached his room together, they closed the door and tried to calm down. However, a rustling was heard in the silence, and a dark shadow spread across the room again. The presence of the vengeful ghost was felt again. Eva and the other student acted together and tried to stop the ghost. Silence reigned for a moment, then a light flashed and the ghost girl's figure disappeared. At that moment, a peaceful atmosphere spread in the room. Eva and the other student hugged each other, filled with gratitude at having survived their terrifying experience. Now the dark events in the girls' dormitory were over, and Eva was full of gratitude for having survived.
If you don't click on this video, you will miss a very nice horror story. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.